Well, why don't we get started? And I just want to say a special welcome to everybody and Happy New Year. I have a brother who is an Anglican priest in England. I think Ben knows him, Pete. And we have a little competition every year to see how long we can go awkwardly wishing people a Happy New Year into the new year. And I think our record so far is March. So we'll see how it goes this year. But Happy New Year. Welcome to Implementa's WWE, our Wednesday webinar extravaganza. If you are new to this, special welcome, and just go ahead and dump WWE into your calendar for the last Wednesday of every month at noon Eastern time. And we'll be presenting different webinars throughout the year, hopefully helpful webinars for youth ministry skill development and so forth. And today I know for sure that we have that. Okay, so my name is Joey Malloy. I'm the Executive Ministry Director here at Implementa, and I've basically been hanging out with youth ministry for 20, 25, 30 years and love it, and love investing in youth workers, and hopefully this will be a blessing to you on that. Today, we are really thankful for Compassion sponsoring today's webinar. First of all, yay, thank you, Compassion. Make sure you're all sponsoring children with your youth groups and your families, and that would be wonderful. But today we have a special speaker. Karla Adolphe is here, and she's coming to us from Alberta. And we're so happy that you're here. Karla, welcome. She's a social media manager for Compassion. And she's got a family out there with a couple of kids and a dog who promises to be quiet today while she talks. At least that's what we're being told. So, and as you're listening to Karla, if you're really excited about her and what she's up to, she is hiring apparently. So there's a job available, and you can check out the Compassion website if you're interested in that. Before we turn things over to Karla, we want to show you this short video to remind us all of the impact that Compassion continues to have.
In early 2003, I was living in Atlanta with my family, and I got a call from the leaders of the church here. The church was ready to close its doors, which was deeply troubling to me since I had helped to found the church along with my wife. And I had this deep-seated conviction that God wasn't finished with this church, that somehow we were meant to still change the world. And by the end of 2003, I was once again the senior pastor of Amplify Church. The church was not just dying from an attendance perspective, but also when you looked out, you saw almost no one in their 20s, almost no one in their 30s, very few people even in their 40s. I realized that our church had somehow just lost touch with the community and definitely lost touch with the next generation. Sweeping changes were going to have to happen. We weren't going to be changing our core beliefs or our core values, but we had to switch from being a church that just said, if it was good enough for me, it's good enough for my kids, to a church that asked a question, what will it take to reach the next generation? Over the first couple of years, probably about a third of the people in our church just left because the changes were too many for them. One of our biggest givers who came and said, you know what, if you want to reach these young people, that's great, but just know that they don't have checkbooks. And if you make these changes, I'm leaving and my checkbook is going with me. And I guess there was some fear and trepidation on my part that if too many people said that we were done. But the fact is, we were already done. Fortunately, others did come. The change in our congregation was very dramatic as we began to see empty seats being filled and people beginning to invite others again, and people coming to know Christ who are far from God. That was just mind-blowing. One of the tangible things that came up was the partnership we ended up with Compassion International. It came out of our youth group, actually. They just wanted to make a difference in the world. And it might be under the topic of social justice, whatever it might be. All of a sudden, that became a catalyst for the older members of our congregation to want to make a difference in the world. We were sponsoring hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children. And through that partnership, I just think it elevated our congregation's awareness of our need to look outside of ourselves. And for that, I'm very, very grateful.
There you go. Thank you again, Compassion, and thank you, Karla, for being here. She's going to be talking to us today about being TikTok star, Instafamous. It's not really a webinar I need since I already am that, basically, right? But for the rest of you, hopefully you'll get something out of this. Actually, I'm really looking forward to hearing this, Karla. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Amy's going to help her by sharing the slides with us. As we're doing that, just a reminder that with the webinars, please kind of mute yourselves would be great. And then as you have questions, please just put them in the chat box throughout our talk. And at the end of the talk, we'll do a little bit of a discussion about Implementa, and then we'll go right to some Q&A time for the last 10 or 15 minutes of our time together. So dump those questions, get them in the queue in the chat box, and that would be wonderful. At the end of all this, if you didn't get your questions answered, please just shoot us an email to info@implementa, and we will get those to Karla or try to answer them the best we can as well. Okay, Karla, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. I just want to do a little preamble that my kids are currently at home. Some of you may or may not be experiencing the same thing, so pre-apologize. I have given them the mom threats, but I don't know if they're going to stick today. So I hope it just is what it is, right, friends? So it's great to be with you. It's really cool that you invited me. Thank you for inviting me, Amy. Thank you for setting this up too. And a lot of my day is kind of stuck behind a screen in not so much of a personal way. I'm dealing with what I would call sort of like this third space, which is social media. And so just seeing actual people, and I can't wait to hear about what you're doing. So yeah, it's just real bright spot in my week. So thank you for coming. I want to talk to you about how, I think social media is morphed into this big thing, right? It's a lot of things. And I know that a lot of you are thinking, do I need to use it? I use it. I think there's going to be sort of a variety of where we're at. So I want to start with just asking you a few questions, which will help me kind of tailor the presentation for you and also get to know you a bit. So the first, if you want to go to the next screen, Amy, that first one, this is all just ridiculous cats today, just to give us a little joy on a Wednesday. But the next question I have for you really is, how are you currently using social media? So, and this is why I said it's going to be varied. So I would love if one or two of you would go ahead and unmute yourself and just tell us how you're using social media and what channels. So channels would be any of the actual channels: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, goes on and on. So does anybody want to share? I would just be super curious to hear how you're using social media already. I have some chats too. I will. So Benjamin is saying for youth ministry, he does not use social at all. Okay, good feedback. Anybody else want to hop on and unmute?
Sure, I'll go. So I'm currently using Instagram, Facebook, and I guess, I don't know if this would count as social media or not, but MailChimp. And so the Instagram is geared towards my youth. And then Facebook is where I'm catching my parents. And then MailChimp is a catch-all for everybody.
Yeah, excellent. So for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with what MailChimp is, it's an email server. It's a digital marketing tool that emails people through a nice set of templates and a nice organized list. So you're not using, let's say, your Gmail or your church personal email. That's what MailChimp is. Awesome. I have a couple more here. Discord, awesome. And then YouTube, great. Instagram for everything. And I do appreciate, Jay, how you separated where you're using things. We're going to talk about that. WhatsApp, MailChimp, good. Look at you guys. I like how they like the chat, Joey. They're good for the chat. Okay, very good. Is anybody here? You can raise your hand or not if you feel comfortable. just feeling like social media is a real drain, or it's something that you're just not comfortable with or you avoid? Is anybody feeling just like, oof, I just don't know about this social thing? Sorry, I can't see you all. So you might have to, so Nate saying yes, is that, yeah. Sorry, I can't see you all. I'm going to just scroll through. I hear you and I want to help you today. So just don't feel like, if social just feels a little abstract or unreachable, I want to give you some encouragement, but also just some advice. If you have any questions, please ask those questions. Don't feel like you can't. You hate social media. Yes, I hear you. You might be surprised to hear a few sarcastic remarks from me about social media as well today. So good. Okay, really good. Thank you. This is really helpful. So we'll go to the next slide, please, Amy. Thank you. So when we're thinking about social media, these are not all the channels. Okay. So I just posted a few channels that I was thinking when I was thinking about the people that you serve, the youth that you serve and their parents. And I like how you separated the two, Jay, because I think that you're dealing with a unique set of people here. My son is just turning 12. So we're just getting to that part of like youth group and like what's happening. And we live in a small town, so we might have to look at a youth group that is not a part of our church or outside of our town. So it's a whole nother community, right? So that's an interesting dynamic. And these kids, these youth are also, they're emerging in their use of social, in their independence from their families. Like you're in a developmental stage, and social media is also in a developmental stage. I want to just really reiterate that. Social has been around, just under 15 years. And in its current state, 3 to 5 years, right? 10 years since we've started doing ads. So things in social are changing so rapidly. The algorithm, which is the mechanics behind social, which makes each channel work the way it does, that changes like every day. They're tweaking that. And I hate to break it to you, but none of us know what those changes are. They don't send out like a nice little note saying like, today we're going to change the algorithm this way, so it's always, it's a very responsive space that is not regulated. And so when you're dealing with 12-year-olds all the way up to, young adult ministry, you also have a variety of what the regulations allow for that age group. So you're not working with just adults where you're allowed to be on Facebook sort of untethered or Instagram untethered. There's all these rules for this developmental age of people that you're working with. So I was thinking about this, how usually when I do social media like presentation, it's for adults, and it's sort of like sometimes it's for businesses, which is a whole nother, game. And so it's really thinking about what are the challenges that you might be facing with the actual channels that we don't control. These are places we cannot control. So when we're thinking about going on Instagram, for example, I just want to empathize with you, because we're thinking through who's on there, who's allowed to be on there, what's the algorithm going to do this time. So when I think about which channel is right for you, these questions are about content, but I think we also need to have a discussion around like what's right for you in your community. You might even be experiencing a community that has a certain level of discomfort around some of these channels. Some parents do not want their children on these channels. I would be one of those. And so I'm wondering if any of this is resonating. How are you guys feeling? Hands, just by a show of hands. Is this what we're dealing with often with making content on your channels? Yes, right. Okay, I see some nodding heads. Great. So what I want to do is I'm going to share with you what the channels feel about themselves. And then I would love to have a small discussion around some successes and hear if any of you have found using any of these channels works for you. And we can also talk failures, but from a channel perspective. So the way the channel wants to be used, Instagram is prioritizing really nice photos and really great and really interactive videos. So that's what I mean by hi-fi and lo-fi. So hi-fi photos, if you look at our Instagram channel, we have the privilege of having photojournalists work in the field. So almost all of our photos are just unbelievably beautiful, like National Geographic quality, which is really cool. And so when we post on our Instagram, it kind of works for Instagram there. You know what I mean? Because Instagram is looking to be this photocentric place. But they also recognize not everybody has a photographer hanging around with them. And so they've also recently in the last year prioritized what I would call lo-fi experiences through reels, stories, that's the daily content that goes away after 24 hours. And pretty much any video you go on there, they're not too worried about if the video is super slick or not. The reason I'm telling you this is I want you, as I go through the channels, to sort of make like a mental inventory of like, what are you already doing? Do you already have a really cool, audiovisual team that works at your church that provides you with assets like video and photos and graphic design all week? Or do you not? I don't know about you guys, but I live in a small town and a lot of our churches don't have an AV department. So if you don't have the AV department, but you want to use Instagram, you can use stories. This is sort of what I'm trying to unpack a little bit. If we were hanging out, that's like over coffee, this is kind of what I would walk you through. TikTok. So TikTok is fascinating. I will say, I don't know if any of you have lost an evening of your life on TikTok. I will admit. Currently, the thing that is hysterical on TikTok is the video of, there's like this line of Kurdish men dancing. They're doing like a traditional Turkish dance. It's really cool. And so TikTok can be a beautiful place. It started with dancing and with dancing videos and with people doing this really interesting thing that no other channel can do, which is called a stitch or a duet, which is where you can interact with that video that you like so much. So if you love this video of a dance and then you or yourself are a dancer, you can put yourself in your video and you can be beside each other. And that it's this really interesting interaction. TikTok also is really popular because it came out right during the beginning of COVID when most of us were at home. And so it has this interesting history and timeline. TikTok can also be a complete dumpster fire. So I will just say that unless you feel like you're a really, you love making content, you're an outgoing person, or you have some like really fun energy in your youth department that involves youth and workers that want to like make videos or have some fun, TikTok could be a really great place. But TikTok is not local. TikTok is global. It does not prioritize local content. So it will look at your profile and it'll see that you said check Alberta on it, and it'll deliver you a couple of Alberta videos here and there. But generally speaking, it's a global platform. So I would say, unless you feel like you want to really tap into and lean into talents that you have that could work on that channel, I would say no pressure on TikTok, to be honest. And TikTok is poorly regulated for minors. So I would say it's also a danger. You might get yourself in some trouble just being on an app that is generally not regulated for minors very well, minors being 18 and under. So if you are local and if you are not interested in making dancing videos, I would say Twitter is a fascinating one. And you'll see I didn't put Facebook on here, and that's a little bit for a reason, but we'll swing back to it. Twitter has been undergoing a resurgence. So if you feel like you are the kind of person that wants to engage conversation, wants to engage locally, wants to share content between other people like this in this group, or other youth or other leaders in your city, or you want to have some conversational traction, Twitter is actually coming back and it's doing a pretty good job with this. Twitter's also a really great place for announcing any sort of event or linking. So for us, Twitter actually has the highest click-through rate, which is people pressing a button. So if you put a link that you want people to visit, like your website, Twitter has the highest. It outperforms Facebook, just as an FYI. And then WhatsApp, I see a few of you are using that, which is a really neat and a really great place to stay connected again in a tiny center and a tiny circle. I don't use WhatsApp for our purposes on compassion, but I would love to hear if you guys love it or how you feel about it. I actually put that there just a bit fishing for myself. We use a Facebook group to do some connecting with our volunteers across Canada. Facebook groups are a very good way of staying connected with people, and you can make them private, so you can have a bit more regulation there. I didn't put Facebook because I'm observing Facebook with some concern. I think that Facebook is going through a really big change right now. And I think unless you already have established a community, like you were saying, Jay, with parents or with youth on Facebook, I would say not to begin a new thing on Facebook right at this moment. I think they're going to be transitioning to the metaverse, which is their parachute out of a little bit of damage control for where they currently are at with their challenges around data collection and business and ads. So I would say invest in some other channels maybe and observe. But if you already have something on Facebook, there's no danger there or anything. It's just a little destabilized. And I think that their algorithm is a little unpredictable right now. So you just might not get very good, energy out of there. Like you just might not get good likes or shares or reads and whatnot. So, and again, that's totally out of our control. That's not a personal thing, like it's not a reflection on how you're doing. And I think that's a big reason why I wanted to talk to you about the channels, is that the channels center their business plan and their business model for themselves. They're a huge thing. And so you just got to approach each channel deciding, will this business model serve my goals? Does this match who I am as a person or my team or my community? So that's a lot of jargon. Does anybody want to share a win or a failure, a learning on any of these channels? I'm going to scroll through.
I will just say that I am completely not technologically savvy and only use social media as purely a communication tool. We very rarely do anything extra. Like I've kind of told myself that I'm not going to use social media for ministry purposes. I will let the experts do that, because there's lots of Christian influencers and on TikTok and all that. So I know that's not my area of gifting, so I would rather funnel people in that direction, or to YouTube, or I see Matt's on here. So to those channels where people are doing really great ministry online. But for me, I've noticed, especially because our group is very heavy on the junior high side right now. I've noticed that we actually had quite a good following on Instagram in the past few years, where our high school students were all on Instagram, and including a lot of our junior hires as well. But I've noticed over the past couple of years, interestingly enough, over the pandemic, that a lot of our junior hires are not on Instagram. And probably for the reason you were saying, that more parents, I think, are clamping down on that. And so I'm finding that I'm caring less and less about the stuff that I'm posting, or I'm not making the time to post on social media as often, because I'm noticing that, well, I'm not really reaching those students anyway, because they're not there. Now, I don't know if they're on Snapchat, but as far as I can tell, we have a very small presence on Instagram now when it comes to our youth ministry. And so I'm literally posting for maybe a dozen of our kids out of our group of 60 students. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out, okay, is this still useful? I don't know. So I'm not sure if other people are experiencing that too.
That's a wonderful insight, Jen. And I wish I had a definitive answer for you, but I don't. And I think it actually is a beautiful, something we could use as a little diving board to jump off into a pool of many more questions around what is the point of social, and how will social evolve, and are these kids not using it? I mean, to be very, very frank, that makes me happy from a child development perspective. But from a community building perspective, I hear in your voice and in your conversation, is there a solution? Because I do think, I don't think that kids are going, I mean, it's possible, pendulums swing, and it's possible that our kids bring back the dial phone, which would be amazing. I showed my kids a dial phone and they had no idea what it was. It was amazing. I don't know that as a society we'll go completely there, but I do think that what you're bringing up is a huge, huge point. Really good. Now, is anybody on this call the opposite of Jen and feels really dependent or really utilizes social quite a bit? I'd love to hear your perspective.
I am not on the opposite. However, I've started typing a question in the chat, and I figured it was going to be very long and tedious. So I just want to piggyback on that a little bit. And I'll ask the question now. It doesn't need to be addressed right now, but is there a difference? I'm not sure if it's a cultural difference, but kind of like a geographic difference between how and where social media is used. I use social media primarily for the communication of information. And Ben had made a comment earlier that Plan to Protect really does limit things. And so really there's very little interaction. It's mostly the communication of information. I've been at my church for about 9 years now, and we are a small rural area in the middle of Manitoba. When I first started, there was almost no social media interaction whatsoever. I would say right now, Instagram is kind of where it's at, Instagram, Snapchat. And so it almost seems like we're always like, I don't know, 5 to 10 years behind where urban areas are. I'm wondering if there's any truth to that, or if I'm just kind of perceiving something that's very unique in my context. So not necessarily a win at all, but just something I'm wondering, and it was way too hard to type that out. And I feel like it was a question that fit very well with Jen's observation.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, Brad. Where are you? I'm from Manitoba. Where are you?
I'm in Dauphin, Manitoba.
Oh, I love Dauphin. Oh, awesome. I love it up there. Beautiful. Amazing question and really good question. So I think what I would bring it back to is, you know, we can be hard on ourselves and say we're 5 years behind. I don't know that that's super helpful in the sense of like, you're not behind if it's not working for you. You know, I would say that the business model is just not something that applies to your community. I don't believe that there's a pressure here for everyone to be on social, especially minors. Like you said, with Plan to Protect being a challenge. I mean, these are all very important aspects that keep our kids safe, that keep our communities growing and keep our communities in a place of integrity. So I think if you don't find the business model of one of these channels really beneficial for you, I would say, let's go to the next slide, Amy. And I would say, let's ask ourselves this question. Let's say you are nervous about the Plan to Protect dynamic, your community, your youth are not necessarily on these channels, whether you're rural, like you're saying, Brad, or not, or it's a parent thing. Let's say also that some of you just are expressing a general like lack of time and assets and creative resources around making content that's going to put you at the top of the pile of social and get the algorithm going in your favor. Then I would say, could social be truly a social experience? And I know a lot of you have said in the comments that you use it personally, but that you don't use it maybe as a brand. So we'll call your youth or your church as a brand. Forgive me. I know that's not who you are, but we're just for purposes today. So if you're using it personally, if you have a healthy engagement with your community outside of social, well, then what can social really just do for you? Instead of playing the game of, I want social to do something for me, what can it do for you? Can it reaffirm who you are and what you're doing? Can it be a place where you can, so I'll back up. One of the things that we do at Compassion is we recognize that social is one of the best, if not the best place to put ourselves in front of strangers. So one thing that I would say, which is great about your sense of region, and Brad, about being in Dauphin, is you may not connect with your community of youth in Dauphin on Facebook, but there is a whole community of Dauphin on Facebook. And so what I would do is shift the thinking and think, okay, I'm already doing a great job connecting with these kids and these parents over here, however you do. But there are a handful of kids and parents who maybe would benefit from being in relationship with me, who are on Facebook, who are on Instagram. So then I would approach your social as more of an outreach, more of a getting to know strangers approach. And because, when you're getting to know a stranger, you don't want to knock on their door every day. That would be a little weird, right? So I think you could aim for once a week at a max, where you are thinking about Dauphin proper, where you're thinking about youth in Dauphin, where you're thinking about commenting or liking on something on Facebook. I'm just using Facebook as an example, or Instagram that has to do with Dauphin. Let's say you have, Canada Day, or you have, like in Calgary, in Alberta, we have Stampede, we have pancake breakfasts, first week of July. You can eat for free for a whole week if you live in Alberta. Stuff like that, that's Dauphin centric, but that you want to be a part of. So that's how I would say that's an example of making the platform work for you, as opposed to you working for the best outcome on the platform. Does that make sense? Sort of, yeah. I think because you're working so connected to families and to a local experience, and please forgive me if any of you are on here and you are not local, please raise your hand and we can address that too. You can really prioritize your social experience as a local experience, and then you can draw resources. If like you're saying, if you have an influencer, Christian educator, or worship person that you just love, and they're using the algorithm in a different way, and they're getting tons of views and tons of traction, well, then that's the beauty of social. You can share that, right? You can engage with it and you can participate with it, but you don't have to go ahead and make all of it. So I think it's maybe just adjusting a little bit more of how we see ourselves in the actual platform. Like who am I here? Does that answer the question, Brett? Yeah. Jen, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was wondering, well, as you're speaking, one thing that I had been kind of turning around in my mind was, do we have sort of two separate social media accounts? Because it's true what I think Benjamin and is it Brad? I think what they were saying about plan to protect, I think we have to, what I'm trying to figure out is how do I, because we do have a community over here, like you were saying, and we keep our social media really shut tight right now because we will post photos sometimes of our students and things like that. So I've been struggling with this idea of how do I keep this safe, but also outreach. And so I was almost starting to think about maybe we need a channel that's more for, that outreach focus, to just say hey, here's who we are and here's how, we can be bringing encouraging messages, or, connecting with people that way without getting too overly personal, where you're getting into kind of more private things. And so that's why for me, I think we're at a really interesting crossroads right now with knowing that okay, I'm not sure if I should be posting these photos. I mean, it's fine right now because our community is very closed, but I just wonder, is this still necessary? Because we do communicate via email to the family. So yeah, just trying to figure out, I think we need almost two, it's the two are almost separate, in a way.
Yeah. Which channel are you using, Jen?
So mostly Instagram. We've stayed away from TikTok, Snapchat, all of that, because well, TikTok mostly because most of us have no clue how to use it. But Snapchat we've kind of stayed away from because of the disappearing messages. So Instagram and Facebook have mainly been used as just pure communication, and sometimes we will post photos. So they're not public pages, they're private group, more like private groups. But I do sometimes get requests on Instagram, especially from students' friends, but I don't know, or maybe it's a connection, so-and-so's follows so-and-so, but I don't let them in because I've promised parents that we keep our social media communities very close. And if we don't know them personally, if I don't know who they are, I don't allow them to join. But I don't like to also refuse people that are curious and want to. So that's why I'm trying to decide, like, do I need like two separate community, two separate, I guess, channels
Yeah.
for those two different purposes? I'm not
Yes.
sure.
I absolutely I can hear it, and I empathize. So one thought is Facebook is a little bit better for that type of thing because you can create a private group. So for example, if you wanted to share photos from the event with parents and that's a little better. Instagram has this thing called friends only, I think it's called. It's like you can send a private thread of like photos and messages to just people that you have sort of approved, and then, but that's not ideal for what you're talking about again. And it, frankly, that always concerns me because inevitably you're going to post something there or there that's meant to be there or there. It always happens. So what I would say is, if what you're doing right now works and it's private and it doesn't feel like you are constantly tearing yourself into halves, I would say lean into that, especially because you're noticing numbers are changing on that channel. If you want to be reaching out, then what I would suggest is even starting with a conversation or a survey or some sort of feedback from your community around, is that helpful? Does your non-youth group part of your church have social? Like, do you have like social from your bigger part of your church? Maybe you would want to talk about having some youth attracted content there, so that again, it's not this Plan to Protect challenge around minors. Very important. I love Plan to Protect. So you might want to just put some of that outreach material on a more general space. So if your parent church has it, or if there's a place that you can do it regionally. That's the thing about social media. Like, find your people, find your community, and identify your goal and go find that somewhere. The thing about social media is it's branched off into so many like elements of itself that you probably could find that. You probably could find an announcement board or something that wouldn't threaten the privacy, right, of your experience on social right now, but it would allow you to reach out to kids and to parents and families in your community. So I would say, unfortunately, I feel as though I'm telling you to do more work or to do a little more hunting, but I think that it's actually that what's in your heart and what's in your instincts to do is really, really, really good. And there isn't one solution. And that's kind of what I hope to communicate with you today. And I hope you're not frustrated. And I hope Joey isn't frustrated with me. Okay, so when I think about showing them who you are and what you do, this is what I'm talking about. If you might be a who over here, and you might be a what. This is what's happening this week. This is what we did on Friday. These are the kids that we're praying for over here. That might be the way to approach social for the demographic that you're working with. If I was talking to your main Sunday morning folks, I don't think we'd be having the same conversation. We would have a few slightly different tweaks for that because of the age of the community. And awesome. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I do want to leave time for questions and more chatting. So I left with you here. Let's see. I wonder, I don't think it's going to work today, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to email these 3 accounts. So this is, the top one is an Instagram account in Washington, a friend of mine who runs a young adults actually group in Washington. This middle one is Jason Ballard. He's a Canadian Christian content creator. And this is the Christian, oh gosh, he's on TikTok and I always forget his name, but he's amazing. He's a youth pastor, but he is a prime example of how he's using TikTok to share his heart, but it has nothing to do with his community, but it attracts people to him, and then it can make connection into the community. So he's a very interesting approach for TikTok, but he could also, what he does could also be translated on Instagram very easily. So I'm going to send you these 3 links and an email with my email as well. You can ask me questions. And just for a little bit of like, I don't know, just like a little bit of a field trip on how you could do some stuff that might work. Again, social is like 90% of my day is my boss saying, try it. So no worries. Okay, perfect. I think there's one more slide, Amy, I believe. Oh, yes. So this is the question I think that we're kind of tackling already, which is how do we solve for this, community dynamic, day-to-day dynamic, and then the external community dynamic. So I'm going to skip this and I'm going to allow us to talk a little more. I just feel like there might be some more questions, or there might be some more conversation that might unpack some of this a little bit more. Does that sound all right for everyone? Yeah, I think, Joe, I think that we're going to do a little chat about Implementa first, and then we're going to dive into the questions. Shall we?
Awesome. Thank you, Karla. Thank you so much. That was great. I'm not surprised at all. That's just stirred up more conversation and questions. So let me give you a little bit on Implementa, and then we'll get right back to Karla. We'll open up the mics and you guys can chat as long as Karla is willing to chat with us. I told her we'd be done at 1. I meant local time, so you really have about 3 hours with us, Karla. It'll be wonderful. Which will be great. But let me share a screen here with you if I can. There it is. There it is. Wonderful. So again, thank you for that, Karla. Hopefully we're seeing the right thing here. Sophie, give me a thumbs up to ease my worries. Good. Just a reminder with compassion. Thanks again for sponsoring us today. Amy's here with us, and Karla. Sponsor a child. Get in there and find one. You get your youth group in there. When I was youth pastoring, I made it a goal to have our small groups within our youth ministry. That would be groups of about 8 or 10 to all have sponsored their own child. But out of that, what I was stirring as more of a discipleship tip is what I was stirring in them was this idea that, yeah, you can sponsor one as a youth group, you can sponsor one as a small group, but as you're growing and developing, by the time you're into and on your way out of high school, make it your goal to sponsor your own personal child through compassion. And that was kind of our goal with each of our students. So anyway, for what it's worth, be engaged with that, and we sure appreciate the ministry that's going on there. A little bit about Implementa. We do have new courses starting up in February that I'm going to tell you about in a moment. But we are an online youth ministry training platform, and we're all about just getting in the trenches with our students and helping youth ministries grow. That's my heart after 25, 30 years of being in the trenches. I've always had a heart to try to help people along the way. And so that's kind of what we're about. So check us out at our website, see what's going on. Let me show you a little bit of a video. My friend Matt, who just jumped off the call here, he's in Scotland right now. I think he just ditched us a few minutes ago, which is good because he might have been embarrassed. But he asked me if he could do a little video for me, and this is it. So it's 30 seconds.
Hey, I'm Matt, and I've been in youth ministry for almost a decade, which kind of blows my mind. But I was thinking last week how grateful I am that when I started out in ministry, I had Joey speaking into my life. I think I avoided a lot of mistakes because I had someone with a lot more experience and wisdom guiding me in the early years. Don't underestimate the value of getting connected with something like Implementa. It's going to help you build a healthy, thriving ministry for years. It's going to help you better minister to the people that you love and want to minister to. Consider Implementa.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. So we do have two courses starting in February, at the end of February: practical application and philosophy of youth ministry. I see some of my new students on the call here today, which is great. And I think I saw Greg here, who just graduated just before Christmas. So I'm going to visit him next week to give him a certificate. It's going to be very exciting. Check your social medias to make sure you catch all that. It'll be wonderful. Okay, so that's Implementa. Our webinars are the last Wednesday of the month. Next month, we have Mike McGarry joining us. He is a youth ministry theologian, and he's a friend of mine. I've gotten to know him over the last couple of years from down in the Boston area, actually. And that's not why I like him. He really is quite good. He's got a couple books out, and he's going to be talking to us about the importance of building a youth ministry theology and what that looks like. So go ahead and book that for next month.